we were only running the speakers didn't run late. We just started a little late due to the marathon and so on. So we have some time, a few minutes for some questions, if you have any questions for our speakers. And then following that, we'll have a break. There's coffee outside and so on, as I had mentioned already. And we'll begin the next panel on the schedule that we had proposed, which I believe is the next panel will begin at 11:15. So if there are any questions for the panelists, please, we welcome them.
It's an old. Her question was, what's going on in possession? I mean, did they really believe in entities in antiquity? And what do they say about it in the present day? And the answer is they accepted the ontological existence of spirits, and they listed them. But one of the ways that I was reading it, and one of the ways I think is a legitimate way to read it in the text, is not just that these are actual liminal beings that exist on certain ethereal levels that congregate within individuals somehow or through some undescribed way, but these ideas are also very much present today throughout India. Yeah.
What is your take on them? It's still present through India. What is your personal take on it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a question that I've been asked a lot. So I thought about this, okay? Almost every conference I speak at, people say, so what do you think is really going on in possession, Professor? And so I've developed a series of answers for that, depending upon the group. Therapeutic model. Okay, let's think of it this way. Let's see, what am I going to say here? Suppose you think you're a really important person, all right? And 50 people come up to you and say, you're a really important person. You go to bed that night thinking, I'm a really important person. And soon the idea of one's own self-importance just really takes over, okay? And you wake up the next morning thinking, I'm a really important person. And suddenly you're possessed by the idea of your own self-importance. Now, there's a lot of ways, I think, that possession really, might occur. I'm not ruling anything out. I've been thinking about this for way too long and looking at, and been out there in the field, you know, at really kind of scary places like Balaji in Rajasthan. It's like looking in somebody's secret mental closet, you know, you want to just shut the door on it. But I do not personally deny the possibility that there may be certain energetically composed entities out there that could actually influence somebody from outside. But also, in my own sense of it is that we feed our own ideas, and our own ideas take over. They gain strength. They gain an energetic power over us and over others, and they begin to assume lives of their own. And we can call that being possessed. I mean, you say, "Oh, I'm just possessed by the idea of this or that." You know, people use it casually all the time. But if we look at it, but this kind of usage also occurs in the classical Indian texts, and it's not that different. So I've seen in different discourses and languages and historical settings these same sorts of ideas. So I think that there's a multivalence. In my big book on possession, I went into in the very beginning, do I want to even retain this word possession? Is that because like the way it's used in America, you know, it means stuff scary, you know, like movies, like the movie The Exorcist, or what's happened in and I'll say that the film The Exorcist has had an incredible influence on the way that Westerners, particularly Americans, think about it. And the rise in possession within American religion has been absolutely phenomenal since that movie. There was hardly any like exorcist in the church before 1973 when that movie, and then it's like big business now, in large result because of it. So the way I would look at it is as a there's a lot of different ways to look at possession. I don't deny any of it, but it's a rather much more nuanced. This is the thing, and is that I wrote this like 750-page book on possession, and like never once did I really state what I really think is going on there. You know, this is why I can say it in front of groups, you know, because it's not like, I hope I'm not being tape recorded. Okay. Uh-oh. But, you know, I mean, I could go on at length about this, but I didn't state it because I was looking at texts at that time. But it's a big subject, and I don't want to dominate the question and answer with this. So, other questions?
Other questions?
So, I'm the taper, and this is actually a follow-up question, because I think what you're getting at is critical in terms of this, thinking about this conjunction between spiritual traditions and modern health sciences. And I'm particularly curious about, as you mentioned, traditional contemplative practices were not widely taught simply for wellness and maximization of healthy living. This quality of possession and being open to other entities was a part of the practices. So I don't expect an answer from you. In fact, I think part of this conference today, we have a lot of people who may have opinions about this, but if you could comment even a little bit more about how contemporary healthcare practitioners should think about treating patients who may be doing contemplative practices, and what some of the issues that they may encounter there might be.
Well, that's a good question, but actually I want to take that question and shift it over, because I had a question for John just about exactly like that. And this is that what you described, it seemed to me that what you were describing in your paper were ways that we can kind of retrack our minds, as you were saying, so that our meditative experience can kind of coincide, or our experience of dying would coincide with that of the enlightenment experience of the Buddha. And what my question is, can we actually turn this, can we, you know, bring this into like the Center for Contemplative Study, contemplative science? I mean, is there a way to like use NDEs and other sorts of phenomena and compare it with what we would describe? Because it seems to me, I mean, this is my question. And I've read a lot about NDEs, near-death experiences, and such alike phenomena. And it seems to me that people's experience of death from that has nothing to do whatsoever with anything that we find in any world religion. That is very different from all of that. And I just wonder what you would have to say about that.
Well, I haven't really delved into NDE literature, but and I think this is a hotbed of NDE research. Is it not, Charlottesville? Is that right? Wow, fantastic. So then I would defer that part of the question to you. I would just say, just to maybe demarcate one possible important overlap and area of convergence is that the sadhana structure or meditative structure, as you rightly point out, being, although it's been generalized to be part of a popular movements of self-help in ways that could never possibly have been imagined in the pre-modern literature and context, whether it's medical or whether it's in ascetic literature and descriptions of ascetic practices, that these were highly rarefied environments in which those would be used and never meant to support normative behavior, except for the normative status of ascetics and renunciates. At the same time, the very basis of the efficacy of a a death opportunity, the opportunistic approach to, say, the transformative moment of death, medical experience of death, is its fundamental premise is that our embodiment is something that is so highly complex and that we contribute to. And of course, that necessarily involves a credibility of the notion of something called consciousness or mind, which is starting to, in the papers just that I've seen, or conference presentations that we've had through the center within this last year, of recent visiting a group from Brown University presenting their neuroimaging studies on the experience of long-time, very, again, somewhat, I guess, virtuoso practitioners of mindfulness practice or Tai Chi, where there are demonstrable effects over time to the way that maybe not, people aren't sprouting 16 or 1,000 arms necessarily, but there is a shift, a measurable shift in the psychophysicality of a person that can actually be quantified. And whether or not this is something that the concrete reality status of consciousness is maybe a moot point, much like you're saying, you should just get rid of the idea, the term possession. It's not really useful anymore because you've already done the major work of identifying an entire broader sense in which possession in the literature and in ethno-indology indicates a radically nuanced notion of self-identity that is occurring with, say, in contemporary Indian culture. The notion of possession, the word doesn't help the translation. In any case, what I would just leave it with is, for the moment, is that the harnessing the mind's ability to, at any given point, whether it be in a highly highly technical and virtuosic routine involving the creation of a mandala environment and being able to hold it with great stabilization for 3 hours, or simply, as you just so well put it, becoming possessed by the idea that you're important, is something that has been deeply, deeply thought about in this literature. And it's not an alien idea that people experience a world that is profoundly material, but clearly based upon what my texts refer to as their pride of self. So that's what a phantom limb syndrome would be, where somebody cannot itch their phantom limb that has long since been detached from their body. There are neural pathways that create physical space around us, and this will be an area I think touched on later by the architectural panels. But that is a fascinating disjuncture that in an NDE, testimonials, you get a lot of white light. I saw the white light. But as far as I can tell, like you say, people aren't, if that's what your point was, that doesn't seem to match up to any known world religion. Although I would also speculate that you could answer that in the kind of sadhana literature that we're looking at. That's somewhat the point, is that people who are untrained for these moments of radical transformation, as their physicality is dissolving before their eyes, they freak out and they're unprepared to recognize it, and they do literally lose consciousness.
Well, it just seems to me that maybe one of the great final frontiers is figuring out what really does go on at death. I mean, maybe science and hypnosis have reached the point where maybe we can finally break through. And from what I've read in the very preliminary form is that it doesn't match what any world religion has to say. But maybe that's something that this center can work on.
So maybe we have time for one more question, and then we'll take a break.